Delaware about to become a game changer in 2024 elections? With early voting turnout already hitting record-breaking levels, we might be witnessing a major shift. But what does this early surge mean for Kamala Harris, and could it actually impact the national race? Today we're diving into some early election news and could play a big role in shaping the 2024 elections. Delaware's a small but politically significant state is witnessing a remarkable surge in early voting numbers that's already grabbing the national attention. When we talk about early voting, we're looking at numbers coming in before election day. This gives us a glimpse into the voter enthusiasm, campaign effectiveness, and potentially a hint of which way the wind might be blowing. Here's what's fascinating. In the first 3 days early voting alone, nearly 57,000 Delaware voters have already cast their ballots. To put that in perspective, the total number of early voters across a full 10-day period in 2022 midterm elections reached just 55,655. So just within these 3 days, we've already surpassed the numbers. This kind of early voting activity isn't just an anomaly, it's a significant indicator that Delaware voters are more engaged and eager to make their voices heard than in previous cycles. Let's break down what it could mean for the upcoming election, how it compares to past trends, and what we might expect moving forward. Why is this surge happening? There are a few factors at play here. It's worth exploring each one in detail. The heightened political engagement is no secret, and the political engagement is an all-time high across the country. The issues are at stake, from economy to healthcare to education, are direct impacting people's lives. Delaware, like many other states, has citizens ready to vote for the future they believe in, and they're turning out early to do so. Convenience early voting has become increasingly accessible, making it easy for more people to vote on their own time without the pressures of election day schedules. For Delaware residents, this means they can avoid long lineups, minimize waiting times, and take advantage of the flexibility that early voters offers. Plus, early voting encourages campaigns to work even harder to get out their supporters earlier, and it appears that Delaware voters are responding positively to that push. Higher stakes mentally at play, with national and global issues feeling more pressure than ever. Voters are making a priority to engage in every election opportunity available to them. Many Delawareans want to ensure that voices are heard in the way that may not have felt was necessary to previous elections. A shift in voting preferences. Historically, Democrats have leaned more heavily on early voting, while Republicans traditionally favored election day. However, the pattern has shifted. In 2024, with more Republican voters participating in early voting, both Delaware and nationally, the shift is likely due to increased encouragement from the Republican leaders who want to capture the benefits of early votes, which is changing the dynamics we're accustomed to. Imagine 70% turnout for Kamala Harris. That's considered an interesting scenario. Imagine if Kamala Harris, the Democratic candidate in 2024 election, were to receive an overwhelming 70% of Delaware's early voting turnout. What would this mean for the state and national race? A 70% turnout in favor for Harris would provide a huge boost to her campaign and demonstrate a strong support for Delaware voters. While this is just a hypothetical scenario, it illustrates the power early voting holds in influencing perceptions of candidate strength and support. What could a 70% share for Harris in Delaware imply? Strong demographic performance in Delaware for Harris is 70% share in early votes would indicate an exceptionally strong Democratic showing in Delaware. Such a lead would underline her popularity in the state, marking Delaware as a substantial blue stronghold for the 2024 elections. Delaware's historical lean toward the Democratic side means a large early voting turnout favoring Harris could suggest that the Democrat base in Delaware is not only turning out but is also energized and determined to make a statement. In comparison to the national trends, a potential lead in Delaware presents an interesting comparison to national trends. Nationally, Harris is doing well in early voting, holding around a 14-point advantage over her opponent. She currently has 53% of the early vote supporting her, compared to her opponent's 39% in Delaware. Hypothetically, 70% figure would significantly surpass the national trend, suggesting a particularly stronghold in this state. Implications of high enthusiasm: when we see numbers as high as 70% early turnout for a candidate, it suggests high enthusiasm on the ground. High enthusiasm means increased voters engagement and more discussions and greater commitment. Delaware's Democratic base is this case. Would it be showing their support not only for Harris, but for the policies she's representing? Crossover support potential. The surge in early voting might also indicate crossover support from independents to moderate Republicans. High early voting turnout can signify that a candidate resonates with a wider range of voters, extending beyond their core base. Delaware's independent and moderate voters might be looking for stability and solutions, and Harris's campaign could be appealing to their concerns. Caution in interrupting early voting results. It's essential to approach early voting data with some caution. Early voting results don't guarantee a final outcome, and there are factors to consider as we interpret these numbers. First, the early voting is just one piece of election picture. Voter turnout on election date remains crucial. While earlier voting can suggest strong enthusiasm, it doesn't always predict who will win currently. We're seeing a close race nationally, with Harris's polling at 49% and her opponent at 47%. When considering both early votes and planned election day votes, demographics and voting trends can be unique compared to other states. For instance, Delaware has relatively small but highly engaged population. This means that while Delaware might show strong early support for one candidate, this pattern may not necessarily reflect the national trend. As mentioned earlier, Democrats have traditionally favored early voting, while Republicans preferred voting on election date. However, this is changing in 2024. More Republicans are participating in early voting, both in Delaware and nationwide. This trend could impact Delaware's early voting numbers and must be considered when analyzing the implications for these numbers. In broader context, the final thoughts: where does this leave us? Delaware's early voting surge is exciting development, especially when considering what it could mean for Kamala Harris and the Democratic campaign. High early voting turnout could indeed be a positive indicator for Harris, particularly if she holds a substantial share of these votes. However, interpreting early voting data is complex. The strong early showing is promising, but it's no guarantee. The true test will come with election day turnout and each party's ability to mobilize their supporters on that day. Conclusion: early voting is a piece of the puzzle. Ultimately, Delaware's early voting numbers are impressive, but only part of the election puzzle. Early voting can offer insights into voting enthusiasm and campaign momentum, but it doesn't necessarily predict the final outcome. The real result will depend on the outcome in the key battleground states, election day performance, as well as each campaign's ability to reach voters where it counts the most. So as we continue to monitor Delaware's turnout, the national trends, let's remember that every vote counts, both early voting and on election day. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure to stay informed as we head toward one of the most crucial elections in recent history. As we wrap up, remember, early voting is just one chapter of the story. Delaware's impression turnout could signal something significant, but the real outcome is still in your hands. Every vote shapes the future, so don't miss your chance to be part of it. Make your voice heard, whether it's early voting or the election day. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, stay updated as we cover all twists and turns of this historic election. Thank you, and remember, your vote matters, so make it count. Please comment below to keep the conversation going.